that's why this sort of leads me to a bigger point, in that you have Jonathan Gannon. Is that the head coach's name of the Indianapolis Colts, former offensive coordinator with the Philadelphia Eagles? We understand the success that he had with Jalen Hurts. You see Jalen Hurts' rookie year compared to now, it's like, whoa. Well, this is a guy who's like again, I'll get to my quarterback tiers later in the show compared to the Athletics quarterback tiers. This is a tier 1, tier 2 guy. This is a dude that was 3 points shy of a championship. That's how great he was, and some argue he outdueled Mahomes in the Super Bowl. That's the kind of success that Gannon had with developing Jalen Hurts. He now is with a quarterback in Anthony Richardson, and I've talked about, listen, when you take time off from doing anything, not a long time, but just take a little time, just sit back and sort of rethink things. That's sort of what I did in the 2 weeks off that I had from the show before I came back last week, like thinking about certain takes, like, okay, maybe modifying them, or when new information presents itself. I have a rule: when new information presents itself, then you're going to have a different opinion. I think Jokic is a prime example of that. Wasn't a big Jokic guy, but listen, he was a monster in the playoffs. My opinion changed. I was thinking about Anthony Richardson. I was thinking about how the Colts aren't, from a roster and coaching standpoint, let's just talk about those two. Colts aren't the ideal organization to go to. I think Seattle would have been a beautiful fit. I know me and Ryan Flowers talked about that in the show before. Ryan Flowers, shout out to him, Clutch Sports Talk host here in the Grid. But the more I thought about it, I'm like, well, Jonathan Gannon helped Jalen Hurts go from a guy who was pretty darn inaccurate, kind of a turnover machine to a certain degree, and a guy who wasn't great pushing the ball down the field. He fixed all of those problems. He, along with, of course, hard work by the man himself, Jalen Hurts. Anthony Richardson's a guy who's built of kind of that. He's not as quiet as Jalen is, but he's built from that same cloth, right? They're cut from the same cloth. Like he's built that same type of stuff. He report said the other day that he put on 11 pounds of muscle. Obviously, he ran a 4.4 at the combine. He's an incredible athlete. Reportedly, the Colts were down, and we kind of figured this would be the case. They were down to Anthony Richardson and Will Levis, and they met with them pretty close between one another in the meetings. They fell in love with Richardson. He's humble. He's coachable. He's a good kid. He interacted well. He did great in the interview. And they had Will Levis. He's showing the gun show on Instagram and kind of arrogant. Loves to push the ball down the field, even if there's nothing there. Kind of a gunslinger. Thinks he's all that. And that's a big reason Will Levis slipped to the second round. The Tennessee Titans made a massive mistake in taking him with a 33rd overall pick. Anthony Richardson's the type of dude that, and I've criticized him, that, folks, he completes 52% of his passes. That ain't going to cut it in the NFL. And I did a segment that my top 10 quarterbacks in the NFL, really none of them, aside from maybe Josh Allen and Lamar to a certain degree, had an accuracy problem. Tua's a limited quarterback. Accuracy's not his issue. You can go a long ways if you put the ball on time and on target. Even if there's limitations with your arm, with your mobility, put the ball on time, on target, you can last a long time in the NFL. But we've seen with Allen, with Lamar, with plenty of quarterbacks, it is something that can be improved upon if Jalen Hurts, by the way, it is something that can be improved upon if you put the work in. And Anthony Richardson is the type of dude to do that. Jonathan Gannon's the perfect coach for him because he was the perfect coach for Jalen Hurts, who's a similar prospect. Here's what I worry about. This is an organization. Let's put it this way. This is a front office. And I'm going to put Chris Ballard aside because I think Chris Ballard's a pretty good general manager. It's an owner who doesn't care about the players' well-being, doesn't care about the state of the locker room or the state of the team, the organization. He just makes impulse decisions. Remember, too, and listen, folks, you're probably looking at the biggest Carson Wentz. I don't even think I'm a skeptic at this point. I think I'm a Carson Wentz truth teller. First segment I ever did on Carving It Up Live ever, October 21st, 2019, is how Dak Prescott was a better quarterback than Carson Wentz. I think that take has aged pretty well. But Carson Wentz, we know, had that horrendous game against the, at the time, 2-14 Jacksonville Jaguars, which cost the Colts a playoff trip in 2021. By the way, this following another horrible performance the week before against an awful Las Vegas Raiders defense. Carson Wentz had a bad ending to the season, and I didn't blame the Colts for moving on from him. I did blame, however, Jim Irsay coming out and ripping the guy to shreds. Like, hey, we would have. I remember he had a quote along the lines of, "Hey, we'd have got in if our quarterback was, if we had competent play at the quarterback position." Jim, you don't say that, because now Matt Ryan and now Anthony Richardson, future quarterbacks, can come in and say, "Wow, he talked about." It's got some Dan Gilbert vibes. Remember how Dan Gilbert talked about LeBron when LeBron left? And some of the things that he said that were just totally crossed the line, bordered into racial territory. You sort of get those same vibes from Jim Irsay that when you're not playing for him, screw you, and he's going to tell you to your face, screw you, or through the media, because that's kind of how he's built. I worry about that type of culture, because we could talk about what a culture a coach can set. I don't know if we give enough attention to how important ownership is. I compare ownership to offensive lines, that you only notice when they're bad, when they're not working. You only notice the air conditioning isn't on or isn't working. Or you don't appreciate air conditioning unless it's not working, is what I'm trying to say here. You don't ever hear about the owner in Pittsburgh or San Francisco, or heck, you rarely hear about it. You hear about it from time to time with Giants. You darn sure don't hear from Kansas City, from the New Orleans Saints. You did in Washington. You do in Dallas. You do in Indianapolis. That's the thing. I've thought more and more about this. I'm like, okay, I was never worried about if Richardson was going to put the work in or not, because he's that type of kid. He's going to put the work in. He's going to try and get the absolute best out of himself he can. And I thought more. I'm like, okay, actually, I don't think the coaching is going to be the issue either. He could turn out to be a solid player. It's the culture that stems from the top that I'm worried about. And we often, I guess, because Jerry is so loud, because Dan Snyder, now former owner of the Washington Commanders, thank God, was just the definition of toxic from a legal and from a running a business standpoint, that Irsay sort of, his quote unquote sins are sort of swept under the carpet. I don't know. I think that, as I've gone into more thought about it, is the thing I worry about with Anthony Richardson, his success in the NFL. We'll see. I'm pulling for the kid, and I don't pull for Florida quarterbacks. You know what I'm saying? I don't pull for Florida. I'm a Tennessee guy. I never pull for Florida quarterbacks. I'm pulling for this kid. He's easy to root for. I just don't know if the culture is going to allow him to be the best that he can possibly be. Thanks so much for watching the show on YouTube, and be sure to go click that big red subscribe button and check out the other clips and full shows from Carving It Up Live, as well as our other incredible content creators here on the Grid Network.